What if you could take that risk, make that change, reach that goal, live your best life? Welcome to another episode of the What If You Could podcast, where we get together with amazing experts and everyday people who share challenges, encourage healing, and explore the possibilities that life has to offer. I'm your host, Gary Scott, and I'm excited that you're along for the ride. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the What If You Could podcast. And my effervescent friend with me, joining me today, is the incomparable Dr. Brian E. Arnold. Dr. B. Hello, Dr. B.
Hey, how you doing today? Just excited to be on your show today. Just fun talking about stuff that can make a difference in people's lives, I hope. That'll be great.
Oh, we're going to have some fun for sure. No, we're going to go all over. We're going to find some fun stuff. We're going to go all over the place. But I'm just going to introduce you real quick. I got a bio I'm going to read, and then we'll fire it off.
You got it. You
Good to
got it.
go? All
Yeah.
right, guys, we have Dr. Brian E. Arnold. Dr. B is the host of two inspiring podcasts, the Journey to Freedom podcast and Living Boldly with Purpose. Today, we get the pleasure of talking with a very special guest, a dynamic keynote speaker, professor, and author who has dedicated over 2 decades to helping individuals unlock their true potential and achieve meaningful success. Dr. Brian Allard, Dr. B, the creator of the Transformative Journey to Freedom podcast and program, a life changing experience designed for those feeling stuck and ready to move forward. Dr. B specializes in guiding individuals through personal and professional breakthroughs, focusing on key areas like faith, finances, trust, health, and identity. With extensive experience as both a podcast host and guest, Dr. Bree brings an unmatched energy, authenticity, and reliability to every conversation. He is dedicated to sharing authentic stories, actionable insights, and inspiring messages that connect with individuals from all backgrounds. In addition to Dr. B's coaching and mentorship, he is the voice behind Dr. B's 7 Minute Mindset YouTube. We're going to definitely get into
All right.
that. And the Journey to Freedom podcast, where he delivers actionable daily tips on self discovery, growth, and purposeful meaning. Known for his blend of humor, wisdom, and practical strategies, Dr. B is a sought after speaker and mentor who leaves a lasting impact on everyone he works with. I'm thrilled to have Dr. B with us today to share his valuable lessons he's learned and the insights he's gained on living a life of freedom and fulfillment. All that's good stuff. Every bit of that's good.
Well, it sounds like Chat GPT might have wrote that or part of that. They gave me a whole bunch of more stuff that I would give myself credit for. So I think my wife was that for.
It's a sweet bio. It's a good bio. So I do have one question, and then we're just going to fire off here because we are the What If You Could podcast. The only question I have is, Dr. B, have you had a what if you could moment? What if I could moment in my life? Do you have a wish for what if I could do something moving forward besides all the amazing stuff you do? What do you have a what if you could you'd like to share with us?
Sure. When you asked me the question and I started thinking through that, first you go to like the superhero stuff. What if I could, transport myself? But then I think I get myself in trouble, right? Because if I could transport through walls and that kind of stuff, I'd probably jump into a bank. That wouldn't be pretty good, right? Because then I'd have more money than I ever need. So I don't want that superpower. Or what if I could be Superman? But when I really think about it, because I'm kind of living some of my best life now. I'm living in purpose, doing the things that I think God put me on this earth. But what if I could have done it when I was 20? What if I could have done it when I had all the knowledge I have now, but didn't have all those years? What if I could have done it without all the failures and but those are what shapes you, right? So you go, okay, what if I could have done it differently? I wouldn't want my kids that I have 8 children. When I think about them, I don't know how much I would have done it different with them. Maybe some of them, if I could have learned their love languages and knew what love languages were before, maybe I could have communicated better with them when they were growing up. Now I know it. My grandkids get the benefit of me learning how to be a dad. I have 16 grandkids right now, and so they get the best of me, which is kind of really cool. Um, what I could do if I didn't have any pain and sickness ever and feel that icky and that kind of stuff. How many more people could I help? How many more people could I, go out and do? When I think about the future, what if I could do what I love every day of my life, for the rest of my life? That would be amazing because we still have to do stuff like pay bills or, go to the grocery store and buy groceries. I often think of like, if they could just make the flavored stuff from the Matrix, I'm okay eating that. I'm not eating to live. I'll live to eat. Or live to eat. I eat to live. And so if I could just have whatever flavors and do 5 micro drinks every day and be okay. But my wife is the opposite. Like she loves to go to restaurants and hang out and taste it. I'm like, okay, so I hope that kind of got us started on our what if we could, because I could go down. We could do an hour on what if, and I love the name of your podcast though because it brings in those things that we think. What if I could go change some of the mistakes that I made or the stupid things that I decided before I knew purchased or I can remember a car that I bought because I wanted to look cool like every young person does, and like, why did I go spend that much money on a car when I couldn't afford it? I even stuff like I drove around like when I first became a professor and I'm teaching at the university. That's right at so I went and bought this BMW, this like 750. I can remember myself like driving around the parking lot, before I would find a parking spot. I'm like, what? I have to go back and change those moments, 'cause I don't know what I was thinking or,
I get that, but don't you think I think about it all the time, like I came up with the what if I could because I'm a real estate broker by trade for 35 years and I've done real estate coaching and stuff. And you get these agents go, God, I want to be, make $1 million or I want to get all these listings or I want to do all this, but I can't. I said, well, what if you could? I mean, let's walk through what if you could and how do you get there? It's a process, right? But
yeah.
I think about what you said earlier, I don't know if at 20, like I think about these like celebrities right at 20 or these athletes that get these $80 million contracts at 19 years. I go, oh, that's a crash and burn mission for me, man. I don't think I can.
No, there's no way the maturity. I said I have to have today's mind in my 20-year-old body. Then I would make some really good decisions and do some incredible stuff. But I couldn't have my 20-year-old mind with, and like you say, you see actors and everybody else and athletes and they, yeah, because I would have done some of the same stupidest stuff.
How many kids did you say you have?
We have eight children, eight children,
Eight children, and how many grandchildren?
16. So we doubled.
16.
Yeah, and all my kids haven't had kids yet. So we're we're still working
Dude,
on.
you look way too young to have 16 grandchildren.
Thank you. I'll be 60 in March. So
Wow.
believe it or not, yeah, I'm heading to those days. So thankful God gave me whatever the gene pool is. My dad's 86 and he's still running track meets. He's still getting
God.
out and running and doing stuff. And my mom's 80 and she's turned 80 last week and she's up and running and doing stuff. So the gene pool for me has been, good so far. And hopefully, I continue to look just the way I look even another 10 years from now. So
I love it, man.
great.
Well, I'm 62, so I'm older than you, but I'm way behind on the baby wagon. I've got one grandson and I've got a second grandson due in any time now. But it's great what you're talking about going back and the superpowers you could have and the what if you could. Because the truth of the matter is, like you said, you are living your best life, man. I mean, you are in a pretty sweet spot right now. How did you get there? I mean, are there some great crash and burn stories along the way, or how did Dr. B get to be Dr.
Oh
B?
my gosh. So many crash and burn stories. So many times that, I already told you about the BMW story. So that's just a stupid story, right? But even like when I got into sales, and so right now, all the things that you read that I'm doing, I'm still doing some reverse mortgages and that kind of stuff until I can just, do full time doing, speaking and training and coaching and helping people. But, I can remember going to, this is a great story. So I go into a corporate place and I'm going to do I think it was some kind of annuity or something that they wanted to put in or a key man insurance policy. And I'm sitting with these executives and then, this is my big chance to make my big, my first big commission, right? I'm going to make 20 grand on this commission. So, I got commission breath and I'm thinking about it. So I go into the bathroom, as they're thinking, and there is on the toilet seat, there's like a bidet attachment to the toilet seat. And at this point, I don't know what a bidet is. I have no clue. So I'm looking at it, and I got this dark blue shirt on, and I decide to turn the little lever that's right next to it, and the whole thing I mean, how much water can come out of a toilet into your face? And I gotta figure out how I'm gonna go back and talk to this board in their nice cherry wood table thing. And so all they have in there is the hand towels, like paper towels that are in the bathroom so you can dry your hands off.
Yeah.
Well, I'm starting to pat the paper towels onto my shirt to wipe it up, and it's breaking off. So now it's not only wet, but it's white speckled. And I'm going, okay, so I gotta go out here. So I'm contemplating like just walking out the door and something. And I walk out there, and of course they just laugh and laugh and laugh. And I'm like, so what is that thing? What is that for? So now I'm asking, it's even getting worse. And now I'm asking what a bidet is for and what it does. And so it ended up working out well. And, the things that you do. And I can remember some of my mentors that we would go on an appointment or something and my car wouldn't start. And, so we're parking it down the street and, in California, this city called Coto de Casa, or, one of those really nice up, and then we're parking way down the street so I can push the car to get it started because all kinds of stuff like that. And then, those are just a few of I went to a drug dealer's house one time and we're sitting out on a spool, one of those electrical spools, and and he brings out a bag of cash, and I'm like, what am I supposed to do with that? And I'm really doing the presentation, right? I got to get through my presentation, and as I see people walking in and out that don't look like, they kind of look like they're having shaking and all that kind of stuff, and then like an hour into it, it dawns on me, wait a minute, I'm not got a crack house, aren't I? Then I start looking at the street and seeing, I guess I'm safe because coming in and out of his house. Had to tell him I can't do anything with your cash. This isn't the kind
Oh, that's beautiful, man. See, that has built you into the man you are. It's like
of absolutely.
when you're preparing to go speak to a crowd or whatever, it's like, dude, there's nothing in that crowd that's gonna blow you away. Dr. B is gonna walk out there and kick ass. There's nothing that's gonna. It's like I already been there, right? I mean, because the
Yes.
towel thing, I've been there trying to do big presentations to like commercial developers and stuff. It's gonna be a big deal, right? And and you just go, you peed on yourself, or you look down, and you go, ah, man, it's just like, what are you gonna do, right?
Yeah, you got to go back out there and you got to face it, and sometimes you're going to end up with the client. Sometimes you're just not. You're way out of your league, and those guys are probably still telling that story and laughing at me. From that day, I had to be. At the time I was, it was like one of those deep blue shirts, so what it looked like when it
Yeah.
was totally wet, and I
Oh yeah.
didn't know how to turn it off. Oh gosh, yeah. So
And I know what when you try to wipe on a dark shirt, paper towels when they're wet, right? You know that it's coming off, and now you're just covered in white shit, and you're like, ah, it was probably better wet, you know?
I would have been better off just wet. Yeah.
Exactly. I
It
love it. So when you're working with, I mean, you've got so many. I mean, there's so many parts to Dr. B. Just after reading the intro, going to your website, looking into you a little bit deeper. I mean, besides being a speaker and an author and a trainer and a motivation person like that, um, tell me about this thing you're going to do with these 14 men now that you told me before we started. What's that deal about?
Oh, that's so cool. Thank you for asking that. And so I went to and I'll just kind of give you the whole story here. So I went to a trust leadership, seminar in Minnesota. It's called The Trusted Edge. A guy named David Horsager. He's done all this research on trust and being able to trust and starting with trust and opening up, and your life can be different if you kind of start with trust. So I go there, and in the room, 400 or 500 people that are in the room. It's a great seminar. The information is incredible. And I look around the room as I always do, and I say, well, there's only about 30 people of color in this room. And I'm going, why are we not getting, my community, I guess, is not getting this information? Why are we, if I think of folks that don't trust folks in our society, we don't trust each other, we don't trust our women, we don't trust the rest of society that we're around. We just have a huge issue of trust. Why are we not in here? And so I came back from that seminar and said, I kind of heard God speaking to me, just saying, I said I want to work with people of color and get some of this information to them, and I enrolled in his trust leadership stuff. And but then God said, no, I really want you to work with black men. And I'm like, but I don't want to just work with black men. That's like a tough crowd of people to work with, especially if I'm going to be talking about trust and faith and identity and health and all the things that stop us from moving forward, because we spend a lot of our time thinking about the past and all the things that happened. And it hasn't been the greatest country in the world for black men in the last 400 years or whatever it is. And so, but how do we move forward? Because we have more opportunity now, excuse me, than we ever have had before. And so as a result, I come up with the Journey to Freedom program. And so the Journey to Freedom is I put together coaching program and a whole bunch of stuff that really identifies some of the issues that we have in our community. The barbershop talks, and you go to I don't know if you've ever been to a black barbershop, but it's just like coming to America, right? And so we're talking about all the athletes, we're talking about all that, but when do we talk about our money? Never. When do we talk about great relationships? We might talk about, women and that kind of stuff, but we're not talking about how do we love them and how do we make them feel special. And, and we're not, so those things we don't talk about trusting each other. We talk about superficial stuff like what Patrick Mahomes is doing or how many yards he threw or, the stuff, or we're joking around about stuff. And they said, so how do we take and get this information? And then that's when I started my podcast, which is Journey to Freedom. And my podcast, that one that I started, I said this year, and this is 2024, I said I'm going to interview 100 successful black men, and we're going to talk about these issues. And so last year we got through 105, and some of the stories are just, oh my gosh. I had a prominent attorney that was in North Carolina that ended up being a gambler, and then he decides I'm gonna kill myself. And then he looks across the street and finds a bank. So instead of taking the 22 and kill himself, he goes over to the bank and robs the bank. Well, everybody in the town knows him, right? Because he's the most prominent attorney in the city. So
Oh,
two
no.
policemen pull him over, because he's driving erratically. They say, just slow down, let him go. He ends up going to prison for I don't know how many years, 7 or 8 years, I think, by the time good behavior, and then comes out and he's like now one of the most prominent, pastors in Charlotte. So I have, some famous, Super Bowl players, some actors and that kind of stuff that I've been able, but just all the themes that came out of that have been, one is us as black men would like to see somebody who looks like us doing whatever we're trying to achieve. That seems to be a huge theme. Like, I need to see, if I want to be a doctor, I need to see other doctors. If I want to be an attorney, I need to see other attorneys. The athlete thing we got taken care of. We're okay with being an athlete. But some of those, if I want to be a neuroscientist or work for NASA, I want to see somebody. So that was a theme. The other big theme that came out of that was our being fatherhood. And so our community has a big issue with dads and families being taken out of the house. In the 70s with the Civil Rights Act with Lyndon B. Johnson, and not letting men and women be in the same house together. So if we were getting assistance because you didn't have a job like welfare, then the dad wasn't allowed to live there. We have also obviously slavery and pulling families apart, and it's just been a history of systems that have not been great for the black family. And so, like, one of the statistics right now that we're working through on a Sunday night show called Why Love Waits is 50% of, like,
Wait, wait,
49%.
wait. What's the show called?
It's called Why Love Waits.
Why
And
Love Waits.
Why
Okay.
Love Waits. And we have 4 black women, 4 black men on this panel. And we're literally hitting some pretty deep issues.
Nice.
The so the statistic that kind of made me do this one is 50%, like 49.89%, whatever it is, of black women who are over 40 have never been married. And 75% of them have had at least one child.
Mm.
And so without dads in the family, single moms, that kind of stuff. And so in 1970, it was less than 19%. So we have this huge gap that's happening. Why Black women don't want to marry men, why men don't want to be with women. So we've been discussing that. And so, as a result, we're trying to figure out, okay, what are these things that are happening with men as we go through this? And so, part of understanding where we need to go is understanding where we've been. And so, Alabama is just one of those states that feels like when you go there, you're in 1970 because it's still super segregated. It's still super. You like there's a black high school. There's a couple of them there. They told me it has like 3,000 students that go to that high school, and the first white student that graduated was 2007.
Wow.
And and now they said they have like 10 that are at the school. But across the street from where it's at is like this beautiful, nice neighborhood. And then you go across the street where the school's at and it's all projects. You're like, how are we still segregated? How are we still having these issues? And that's in Birmingham. So we'll start out in Birmingham, then we'll go, where the bombings were and the fire hose scenes that we've all seen. Then we'll go to Selma. We'll go over the Pettus Bridge, which is part of that movie Bloody Sunday. So we'll walk over there, see that. And then on the third day, Brian Stevenson, the guy who wrote the movie Just Mercy,
Mm.
he created a museum. It's like called the Equal Justice Museum. And there's a lynching portion of it, and the African American slave trade and mass incarceration, which is another thing that pulled families apart. And it's just an incredible museum. So we'll in there and then we'll come back. And then we're going to start transformational groups that we will, kind of like barbershop talk groups, but on those 5 subjects, faith, truth, faith, finance, trust, health, and identity. And so we're going to even, hopefully the plan is to bring young men to, down to a trip like that. I live in Denver, so we don't have any equal justice museums here. Although Colorado has had its, share. I see pictures of old churches and stuff where the Klans on the doorsteps and everything doing this stuff. Just hey, here's our rifle. Here's our hood. We're getting ready to walk down the streets. But when you think of civil rights, you don't think of Denver, Colorado.
No.
You think of the South. So that's where we're going. It's at the end of this month, so we're starting out with the 14 men who are going with me. Some ages from like 29 up to I think the oldest person's like 64, I think. And we're really we have some story stuff that we're doing, and it's gonna be really powerful.
Okay, Dr. B, here we go. Now you
Right.
just opened up like 77 rabbit holes. Okay, just you opened up some serious like galactic black holes here. No pun intended.
Cool.
Sorry. All right, it starts wow. Okay, we started with trust.
Mhm.
All right. Now let's be real honest here. There's some serious trust issues in the black community, with the white community, with police, with authority, with the whole politicians, with everybody. I mean, that is abundant, right? But there's also trust among the black community,
Mhm.
right? Um, so, and you covered so much there. Why don't we celebrate successful black men? Why is Ben Carson picked on as far as an Uncle Tom? Why do we see a lot of super successful non-athlete black men who are super right on successful dudes that don't get acknowledged in their own community? If we're looking for role models, if we're looking for trust, if we want to look at a freaking brilliant brain surgeon who's given his life to helping people, Dr. Carson, I mean, that's a trust issue too. I mean,
It's huge.
how do you, as a young black man, want to do better if you see a guy like that get his ass kicked, but a guy like Patrick Mahomes and LeBron be idolized, right? Where's the disconnect there?
I think a lot of it is in our own self-image and what we've been taught we're capable of and what we're taught we can do. And it's like that crab in a basket where you don't put the lid on the basket because if if you have one crab, he'll crawl right out, but you have another one, somebody's always bringing you down and can't get you there.
Yeah.
And so we see that and we kind of say, okay, yes, is it really possible for me? Well, probably not. And so all of a sudden, does his viewpoints line up with mine? Well, I don't think we have enough data to go by of experiences that we've seen to say that first I'm scared because I don't think I can ever get there because I don't believe enough in myself to believe I can be a neurosurgeon. Right. So now what's the first thing I do? I got to put down what I believe I can't do. And
Hmm.
so we spend so much time doing that, but we can believe, like I said, we have the athlete thing covered, right? We
Yeah.
can believe now. There was a time probably 20, 30 years ago when being a black quarterback was, oh, we're going to talk about the three black quarterbacks that are in the league, and we're going to talk about Warren Moon or whoever those guys were,
Yeah.
as bad people. But now, we got Lamar Jackson, right? So he can do, he can do
MVP. He's
everything.
MVP this year, by
Is
the way.
it? Is he okay? So
Oh,
yeah,
he's going to be MVP. Yeah, no
he
doubt.
should be. But they might give it to the Buffalo guy. What's his?
Oh.
I can't think of his name. Yeah,
No, he's got to eat. Yeah, Josh Allen has had
Allen
a
Josh
great
Allen. Yeah,
year, but no way they don't give it to Lamar. It's just too crazy of a year
yeah,
this year. But
it is. But
but so
but there was a time where okay, that's cool. It can happen. And then a lot of us have all tried to play football or basketball, so it's something we can relate to. That we have a skill set, even though it's not at that level. We have a skill set that we know how hard he had to work to do what they're doing when we think about athletes. Or we've all tried to act and we think of like a Denzel or somebody who's an amazing actor. But when we think of somebody who owns a business, where are all of our examples of business owners? We think of a neurosurgeon. Well, he must be taught, and then he's not saying the same things that were where we grew up, and so he must not be one of us. But then there is a group that's going, wait a minute, maybe I can do that. Maybe I can do that. Maybe I can do that. And so I think we're a few decades away from where it's not going to matter. But at the same time, all the things we're told, like if we don't have a dad in our family, we don't have a dad that we're growing up with. We're our mentors and and then the community sometimes comes by. I had one of my podcasts I did was a young man who is, I think he's probably in his late 30s now, but when he was a kid, he lived in the Bronx. And he moved to, his name's Greg Jackson, and his mom moved him to Baltimore because that's where her family was, separated from the dad. When he got to be 13, mom couldn't handle him anymore. So she sent him back to live with the dad. Well, mom didn't know the dad's the largest drug dealer in the Bronx. So now he takes over. He did, so he follows in his dad's footsteps. His dad ends up going to prison. He ends up going to prison because he's selling his dad's stuff, and then so he gets out after, I think, he said maybe a year or two, can't remember, moves down to North Carolina, starts doing marches, so now he's doing like Black Lives Matters marches, that kind of stuff. So right, whatever those marches are, befriends the chief of police in Charlotte, and then goes over, and the Charlotte police is wanting to know, his story and his background. And today he's training, like sensitivity training, most of all the Charlotte PD, in that area. So now it's like, okay, so transformation from drug dealer to, now training officers on how to interact with the Black community. That's an example that we have to showcase often and a lot. And once we do that and we do enough of those where we see each other, we know then we're not going to have the same trust issues. But we don't, I mean, if we don't trust ourselves, we definitely can't trust.
Was there progress? You know, in my brain, right?
Mhm.
I am a white guy from California. I grew up in a high school that I know Steve Walton for sure. There might have been four black guys in my entire school, right? Palm Springs, California, I went from Orange County to Palm Springs. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, we just weren't exposed to a lot of, I mean, I think we had a Chinese dude and a couple Mexican guys, that's it. That's, when I was a kid. Um, but what I do remember about what I thought about race and the challenges that I saw, with the 60s and trying to get the civil rights movement, things like that, was Why on earth are we letting the government put black people back on a reservation? Why do we have these cities with these projects with housing? I do a lot of Section 8 housing, right? I do a lot of it. Most realtors won't touch Section 8 housing. They hate it. I love it. I think it's the greatest thing in the freaking world. Landlord gets automatic payment from Riverside County. How do you go wrong with that, right? But I found that most of the people come to me are black people on the housing. And you see them almost ashamed of it. I'm like, dude, there's nothing wrong with this. This is good. But when I've had children of the families, I'm a friendly guy. I love the mom. I love the dad. If there's a dad, if there's a mom, if there's a family, whatever. But there's always a lot of kids, and the children won't even look at me. They just won't look at me. And I'm like, hey, buddy, what's going on? How are you? And I'm thinking, it's just still the stigma of being placed and being a ward of the state, a ward of the government. Do what we say, vote this way, react that way, and then we'll take care of you. How do we break that? How do we get out of that?
It is, part of it is the systems that have been in place are getting exactly out of what they were designed to do. And so we have to change, a lot of these systems. And we come with this belief that we're in lack. Like, even though there's, unlimited resources and limited ways to tell people, if we really wanted to, our society is got this belief in it is, if you have, then I can't have. And so I can't allow you to have because you're going to take away from me. And that has been, with redlining and everything through, the housing stuff that has happened. When you think about, I'm part of an organization called NAREB, which is the National Association of Real Estate Brokers, which they had to form their own, their black realtists because they weren't allowed to be in like NAR in 1947. Even though National Association of Realtors was formed in 1908, they couldn't participate. And so you think of like when World War II happened and all the Army Navies, the World War II vets came back and they were able to get VA loans to get into housing. You'll love this statistic, right? 1947, when they came back, how many black men that were in the service were able to get a VA loan when they first came back in the first few months? Two. I mean, you would say like a couple thousand, a couple hundred. Two were able to participate. And so that's where wealth generation began, right? Because now people were able to get houses, they were able to move in, they were able to do the nuclear family, they were able to move forward. And I'm not saying black folks weren't able to buy, but we've been renters for so long, we've been consumers for so long. And then we try to get loans in cities where they have redlining. Well, you can live in this community, but you can't live in our community. Chicago had a wall that literally separated folks, and so you just start believing and you get discouraged, and now it's starting to change a lot, but some of those systems are still in place. So I mean, was it Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and one other, I can't remember the other third one, in the last 3 years got in trouble for redlining in 2024. You just go, man, is this even happening? I go down to Alabama, we're going this tour. We went to a restaurant, I went there last year. We went to a restaurant, and this is for white, black, everybody. You just think about segregation and stuff and how hard it is to move up. The minimum wage is still $7.20 an hour in Alabama. It's the national minimum wage. I don't know how anybody lives on $7.20, but you think of folks that are in restaurants that they have to rely on tips and stuff. And we went to a restaurant where you could tell there's not a lot of traffic coming through there. Asked the waiter, how much do you make? And he was a young black gentleman. He says, I make $2.20 an hour. So I mean, so you work for 80 hours, you're gonna get $80. For a whole week's work.
Crazy.
How do you? Because I know a loaf of bread in Alabama is 25 cents. So
Yeah.
how do we live? And it's more. I would say it's even socioeconomic is how we get out of it, and it's not by just giving people money. We've done that experiment, right? It isn't, and that's what we're continuing to do. But by continuing to do that, but we can't stop doing it until there's opportunities to be able to go out, and whether it's the educational system that has kind of failed a lot, that hasn't taught people how to do things to be able to, or it's the belief systems that we had to do, but we have to have jobs and things that are available where people can move up and not, because if we just stop giving people, now we're just in another mess that we have, so we have to continue and just, grow out of it, which is going to take, but as long as those belief systems are there of lack, that, we're going to continue systems. My
You
first,
know, it's
oh,
such a trip too because people, we talk about 400 years ago, 200 years ago, 300 years ago, but people don't get it. Like I was watching an Elvis Presley documentary, right?
mhm,
And I mean, the dudes that he was hanging out with, a lot of great black musicians, right? Couldn't follow him to another club. He's like, look, dudes, let me buy you guys dinner here. Let's go over here. They wouldn't go. Or Frank Sinatra, like he would be touring with some of the greats like Ella Fitzgerald and frickin' um one of my favorite of all time, When I Fall in Love. Oh, come on, man. Anyway, but some of the great Nat King Cole.
okay,
Um, like when he went to go see Sammy Davis, Sammy Davis is like, come on, let's go have dinner. You were awesome. He goes, I can't go. I can't go in there. Or when he had opening acts, they'd be like, yeah, you can come eat at this restaurant that you're performing at, but your opening act has to go eat in the kitchen or he can't come in at all, right? And we're talking in the 60s. I mean, we're not talking freaking, 100 years ago. I think people lose sight of that when they say, well, God, there's so much opportunity. Things are different now. Right. And I love that's why you're going to Alabama because you're like, no, man, it's frozen in time.
it's frozen.
The
Feel like,
brothers in Alabama are just like it was 100 years ago,
unless you're at the University of Alabama, where everything is, a Taj Mahal of everything because they're so good in football. But other than that, the rest of the state has, they won't change the minimum wage. I mean, they keep asking for it to be done. I can remember when I just did a podcast with a young, he was when I worked at Moreno Valley High School. So I was a coach over at Moreno Valley High School.
Yep.
And he was one of my athletes. And so now, 20 years later, he's saying, the stuff that you said, the things that we talked about. But even then, when I started teaching in 1992 or whatever, 90 in Moreno Valley High School, the way that they zone the city, so they put Canyon Springs High School in one area, they put Valley, I think it's called Valley View in another area, and then Moreno Valley High School, every apartment in Moreno Valley fed into Moreno Valley High School. The Canyon Springs and Valley View it was only single family housing that went to those high schools. Then the district gets this brain trust thing, right? So they're hiring new principals. So they hire the principal from Compton, who's used to, because we had all these latchkey kids that were, parents were working in Compton still, but driving out to Moreno Valley and living there because they could afford to buy a house. So they hire the principal from Compton, put him at Canyon Springs. Then they take the principal from Palm Springs and they put him at Moreno Valley High School with all the minority. And so the Palm Springs guy is trying to deal with race issues and trying to still teach and education and has zero clue. And then the parents are yelling at the Compton guy because he's trying to do all these community things that they want him to, hey, our cheerleader, you need to fundraise, whatever it was that they were doing. He's like, how does our world just get it wrong so often? It's like that logically you would go, okay, let's put the principal who changed around Compton High School to change around Moreno Valley. Hello. And the poor I mean, neither of them last more than 2 years. Yeah, I don't know if the principal is in Palm Springs just went back or whatever he did, but yeah, it's like he was way out of his league. Just
Yeah.
no chance whatsoever, no clue. Yeah.
So I know you work with everybody. I mean, you inspire everybody, whether it's faith, finances, health,
Yeah.
inspiration goals, all the motivational stuff you're doing, your YouTube series, your books, and stuff like that. But at your core, are you thinking, you know what? I have to help my brothers and sisters. I have to be in my community. Or you're like, no, 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 that's not the way I want to do this. I want to reach out to everybody so that in that inclusion, in being inclusive with everybody, will help everybody, will feed into everybody. Is that more what you're thinking? Or
Absolutely. Well, if I don't have relationships with, white folks or, diversity folks, and I don't know what's going on and see what their struggles are, how can I match them? Of course I want to help my own community and lift it up. But part of my own community is how do we How are we uniquely interchanged with, it doesn't matter what you look like, and we're not quite there yet. We're a lot further than we've been, but even for me, I still go into rooms and I look, like you said, if I walked into a high school right now, that, I'm looking to see how many kids are kids of color, how many kids are, because that's the culture I identify with. Um, but it is not exclusive. The high school I went to here in Colorado, when I went to high school, there was 3,500 of us, and there was 30 black kids that were there. So, so I went to an all white high school, and then, what I guess I would say, but I just happened to be a pretty good athlete, which allowed me, because you'll love this. When I was in high school and there was 3,500 students, 35 of us were black, 20 of us that I know of the 35 were all in special ed classes. Why was I in a special ed class? I mean, I guess I do have dyslexia, but I don't know if I had it severely enough to spend my whole educational career in a trailer separated by all the other students. And then you think about our curriculum and the books that we read and all the things that, I didn't get to do in high school. And then I go to college and I don't have the education that could sustain college. I wasn't going to go to college. I was going to be a stuntman. My mom said, please go to college because that's how you're going to get ahead. And she said she'd buy me a Jeep if I graduated.
That's
And
so bizarre, though. I got to go back to these kids now. That is so freaking bizarre to me. So you got 3,500 kids. That's a big ass school, right?
it's the
That's a
biggest
big
school
school.
around. Yeah.
Yeah. And you've got 35 black kids, and you've got 20 of them that they dropped in special ed.
Yeah.
And and was there testing to go, well, we do testing for everybody, and you guys are the winners. You get to go in special ed, or was it just like, well, I mean, what did you think of that? I mean, how does that affect you as a kid?
Yeah, well, and you just do what you do because you're a kid, and you don't really realize what's going on here till I graduate and then go college. I'm like, wait a minute, what? Are you kidding me? Why? What? Yeah, it made no sense. Is it because we all came from, different cultures, or our parent, my dad, grew up in Kansas City in a segregated area. My mom grew up on a farm, and most of all the kids that were there were all from housing that was all segregated before. Because I'm going to school in the '70s. I graduated in '83. So I think it was just a belief that these kids are going to start coming into our schools. They can't be very smart. And I think that's just,
Yeah.
and so
Wow.
they're not going to be able to get it. They're not going to be able to understand,
Yeah.
and that's our educational system being behind. I never saw a black administrator, or even there might have been I don't even know if I saw a black teacher, my whole, K through 12.
See, I love what you're doing with these guys that you're taking to Alabama, and I love the barbershop thing. Everyone understands the black barbershop thing because we've
Yes.
all seen it either on TV or movies or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But there's also something that's very, very admirable and desirable and needed in all communities. When you do go into a black community and you see a very tight family network and a very tight family, not a lot of the inner cities maybe are different because there's just weird shit going on there. But we just bought a house in Arkansas. We live in California, but we're moving to Arkansas. And we just loved the vibe and the feel of the communities, that we
Yeah.
saw there. And I think you see the Mexican communities, the Asian families, the white of that group. I think the white families are the most screwed up of all of them, of dysfunctional. Because when you do see a tight black family or Mexican family or whatever, it's a whole different dynamic, bro. I mean, it's like they are tight,
Hmm.
and they've got tradition, and it's like dinner time. You go to dinner time with a black family or Mexican family, it's way different than when you go to dinner with a white family.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's tradition there. I mean, you still eat and get together and you have dinner and you're laughing and you're talking. It's not that. So there's so many great things. There's so many great foundation there. Just somehow we just got to bridge this gap of this crazy. I don't know. I mean, you're in it. I'm just talking out my ass from a white dude from the outside. It's not really fair, but I mean, you're in it. I don't know. It just doesn't seem in today's day and age that this is still it's craziness to me, right? It's just
It
it doesn't
is. It is.
doesn't
It's,
make sense to me.
and the families are becoming tight, and as interracial marriages are happening, and folks are understanding different cultures and trying to understand it. We're starting to take it back out, so we're going, hey, we can't have any of these books in schools, we can't talk about Black history in any school anymore. I it's If it's the truth, why can't we talk about it? Because history is only in the perspective of who wrote it, right? And from the
Yep.
lens of who wrote it. Um, and we've learned that from the whole Christopher Columbus who got lost, and he wasn't a really good guy, and he had slaves and all those things that we think he was this great man, but it's only from that perspective. And so we have to learn each other, and we have to have relationship, and everything is truly about relationship. And so the more we can understand that we have more in common than we have that's not in common, the faster and the better and quicker it gets. And we do have more in common. We are human beings. I think the biggest divide is social economic, and that's where, like, when you're in, when you go to Arkansas, where you're going to find the biggest, even in the white culture, and the neighborhoods that people are in, and who gets to live where, and who gets to have what, and who's getting the education, and all those things. That's where we have to lift people up in the social economic side of it. Like I said, giving opportunities where opportunities aren't. I don't know if I could, move to Arkansas and say, okay, I would fit in these communities. And I'm sure there's some that I would, but where my social economic status is, do I fit in Arkansas? Right. So if I go move into the type of house that I had in California, or the type of house, that I have even here, if I transplanted myself into Arkansas in a high, say an upper middle class, or closer to wealthy area as a Black man, what does that look like? I don't know, because I haven't tried, I haven't been there, but it is way different in other communities. Yeah,
Is it is it working? I know this is not fair to you. You are
I'm not talking about that.
Dr. B is a lot of things, guys. I read his bio, but he is not the spokesman for the entire black race. All
Yes,
right. So
absolutely
I don't want
not.
to nail you to the wall and all this stuff. But do you see, but I just fascinated because it's so difficult to have talk about race, man. It's
It is.
so difficult. Everybody gets their cackles up. Everyone gets weird about it, right? It's just so bizarre that we just can't talk openly about something that's just so right in our face. It's just completely craziness. But so is there a place that's working? I mean, do you see a place you go, man, they're getting it right. This is working. We're seeing more integration. We're seeing more opportunity. Is there some place you see that's working?
I would say in almost every city, we're starting to figure it out. We're not there yet. Not every major cities are figuring out, in the suburbs and around, where it is the conversations. We're already starting to have the conversations. My fear is we go backwards. When we think about, there's, I don't know how all this stuff about DEI has showed up, and we have to take it out of everything. We can't have people, my dissertation was on hiring Black administrators in schools. Why don't we have a lot of principals and superintendents? And because opportunities just haven't been given. If you have to work your way up the ladder, and there's a good old boys network that hires people, when they say, there were several times when I would see jobs that would say, well, you need, there's one here at the county in Denver where it said you need like 7 years of experience in in of doing whatever you're doing at this county or whatever. And then you go, well, how many can you hire from within? Do you have one Black person or one Hispanic person who has been there for 7 years in that position? No, not one. So when you start thinking those systems that I'm talking about, the systems are designed, hey, you put 7 years, well, not one person can even apply. So it's not based on experience or even potential, because that was potential versus experience. How do you give somebody experience if you don't think they have enough potential to do it? And that's where you just go, okay, can it continue to work? Can we have to change our systems, because the systems aren't working. And then we say, well, we got to take DEI out. Well, what DEI was doing was just more of awareness than anything. I mean, and that you have to look at potential at some point. You can't just go on merit if you haven't given anybody the opportunity to get the merit, right?
Basically, that's an opening. That's not an opening
Yeah,
because you can't fill it, right? It's
can't
like
fill
that's
it.
bullshit. It's like, wait a minute. That's not an opening. There's no way to fill it. Man, we're blowing through time here, and I got so much stuff to cover with you. Just so real quick, because I know we're on a kind of a hard break. I wanted to ask you about, but thank you for that discussion, by the way. And
Absolutely.
I think we
I'm
need
glad we have it. We need
way
to have
more of it.
it. Yeah.
Way more of it. Way more of it. Um, I wanted to ask you real quick about a couple things. One is the 7-minute mindset series on YouTube because I love stuff like that. So what's the deal with the 7-minute
So
mindset?
basically, though, my whole process is be how do you become the person you need to be in order to do the thing that you were put on this earth to do. So it's like be, do, have. And so I talk about we spend so much time in our lives trying to do something first, then we have something, now we have it, now we want to become the person who deserves it. Right. And so the great example is I'm talking about the BMW I got, right? So I wanted I'm a professor, right? And I go buy this thing that I can have, but I'm not the person who's supposed to be driving that car around. I can't really afford the car. I don't know what I was $40,000 then, but I'm on a teacher salary, right? And I go buy this super nice car because I wanted to become that person after I did it and I have it. And so a lot of us we go out and do and expect great results, and then it doesn't work. And so the mindset series is just talking about, it has some affirmations in it, it has some prayers in it, it has some, just thought things of, okay, here's how you start becoming the person who can do the thing and being in your purpose and being in, what your mindset, because that's what changes. And if you become the person that can do whatever the thing is, you can't help but do it. It's gonna automatically happen. And then we go backwards. We go have, do, be, right? I'm gonna go buy something. I have it. Okay, now I gotta go do something so I can afford it. I gotta go do something so they'll believe it. I'm good at it. Oh, then I'll become the person. And it's all backwards. So that whole series is just about, it's just me doing a meeting every day, 7 minutes of just, hey, okay, so today this is you're not a person who is good at habits, right? You haven't created the habits of just waking up every morning and doing something positive. You wake up every morning and have a donut and scream at somebody. So we need to change who you are so that now you can get that promotion at work because now you're a person that somebody would want to hire there. And so that's what it's all about. So it's all mindset.
I love that because you're not a very engaging, energetic guy.
You're
I can
correct on that,
imagine.
right?
Right. Nah, man. I almost fell asleep like 3 times. If so, this is so see, because I love stuff like this, right? So, I mean, I could just see how if someone could get in the habit, because it's hard to motivate ourselves for some reason, like especially if you're not a good visualizer, or you're not a dreamer, like you said, maybe you don't even know enough to dream big, right? Because you just
That's
haven't
awesome.
been
Yeah.
exposed to it, right? So if you could get up and just fire that onto the TV, even if it's in the background, even if it's just, you're not even paying attention for the first couple of times. And then all of a sudden it's like, what? Wait a minute, what did he say? And then it pulls you in. And then all of a sudden it's like, Dr. B, dude's a real deal. So it can lift you up, right? And get you thinking because we don't start thinking for like months at a time in
I
this
know.
country, right? So, but
Yeah.
imagine if you could fire that spark every morning and get your mind thinking like, whoa, wait a minute. I think it's brilliant. I love it. I'm gonna start firing them up. I'm gonna start watching them. I think that's a great idea. But before I lose you though, because I know we're on a hard break here, but okay, 2 books.
Mhm.
There is no tiger. Overcoming Overthinking and Controlling Anxiety. And the new book coming out in 2025 is The Decision Formula, which kind of speaks for itself a little bit. So, but what's this? There is no tiger. What's going on with there is no tiger?
Well, I love, yeah, because it was such a fun book to write because we all did this overthinking. We play these movies in our mind of things that we're trying to control what's going to happen because it's really not true fear. True fear is a snake just showed up in my house and now it's going to bite me and it's going to kill me. I'm going to die. That's true fear, right? I'm going to go out and speak in public or I'm going to go on a podcast. That's not fear. That's anxiety because you think the outcome is going to change who you are. And so we play these movies. I'm never the positive movies, right? With, hey, my wife's going to love me so much that, I'm not going to be able to know what to do. We don't overthink that. We think I'm going to come home and my wife's going to be mad because I got, ketchup on my pants and she's gonna have to wash it, and and we go down, and then my kids aren't gonna they're gonna hear it, and they're gonna be traumatized for the rest of their life, and we go into some deep holes when we are doing anxiety, and so or when we're doing, so I wrote, here's the copy of the back of the book, right? I like to
Love
show,
it.
my son worked for Pixar, so he did the graphic.
Oh wow. Yeah, because it's an awesome book, awesome cover and stuff like that. But it is so true. Why do we do that to ourselves? I mean, it's like that fear thing, the false evidence appearing real, right? It's just like you just go right to this is gonna be bad. It's gonna be
Mhm.
bad. And then if it's not as bad as you thought it was, instead of going, oh, thank God it wasn't that bad, you go, well, it could have been bad. It's
Yeah, we
like,
just
wait.
jump into that. And so this whole book is really practical on just a whole bunch of like mindfulness apps and loving kindness meditation and daily reminders of somebody who just overthinks everything because it paralyzes people and then they don't do it. The when I won a sales contest 15 years ago, and I get to go to the island, so I get to go to St. Martin, and I get to take my team there. And so I got my team coming, and we got spaces in the hotel, and so everything goes wrong. So the car's supposed to pick us up and take us to LAX, and we can't do that at that point. That he's late, and thankfully the plane was delayed, so we got there, and then one of my team members didn't have their birth certificate or passport where they needed to get into the island, so we're figuring that out, and then we get to the car's not ready when we get to St. Martin, and then we get to the hotel, and the guy tells us that he doesn't have reservations for my team. So by this time, I am, you can imagine, I'm as energetic
Oh
as
yeah.
I am now. I'm energetic and not in a good way, and so I'm just laying into this, clerk that's just trying to check us in and figure it out. Call comes from the side. This guy, the concierge, comes out, and he's like, "What is wrong with you, man? What are you doing, man?" And I'm like, I and I go into this whole thing. He goes, "Settle down, man." He says, there is no tiger coming after you. There is no shark. There is no. So you need to settle down. You in paradise. Look around." And he he says, "I need to tell you, we're gonna figure this out." He says, "But on the island, there are no problems, only inconveniences." And so, what do you say to that, right? You calm down and you you start figuring it out. And we stayed and we had a beautiful trip and all that kind of stuff. But that kind of went down my road. Now, every time I get into one of those stressful situations, I look at it as an inconvenience instead of a problem. But yeah, so it's just full of like that stories in there, and a couple other stories that are just, hey, this is a good thing. On the decision book, the big thing is that I kind of start out with is there's reversible decisions and there's irreversible decisions. And most of our life are reversible decisions, but we think they're all irreversible. Like if you're going to get your leg amputated, that is irreversible. Your leg is not growing back. If you're in a relationship and it's going bad, or you're going to move across country, right? If you get there and you go for it and you don't like it, move back home, right? It's a reversal. If you go to Arkansas, right, you shouldn't overthink it. It's a decision. And then I usually talk about like, okay, there are some decisions that have disciplines that go with it. And if you're not willing to do the discipline, don't make the decision. You want to be a world-class swimmer, but you only want to work out twice a week, you're not going to be a world-class swimmer. And then the journey, and then the cost. We don't think we weigh the cost a lot in our
Yeah.
decisions of what is it, if you're moving across country and you're taking your kids out of school, and it's gonna, they're in this amazing school, and it's gonna be like, hey, that's a lot of people do, but did you weigh that before you made that decision? So
Yeah.
that's
I
what.
love that. And I love there is no tiger. See, now that is going to be in my head now
Yes,
all the
every
time.
time.
When shit hits the fan and I start losing it, I'm just going to go, dude, what's the worst? I'm not going to get eaten alive. I mean, my wife and I are scuba divers and we dive with sharks all the time on purpose. We go look for the sharks. Sharks have zero interest in eating us, you know what I mean? But when people hear that, like, dude, you can't die with sharks. You're gonna die. They're gonna eat you. I'm like, dude, the shark has zero interest in us. Trust me on that. And
But you're worried at an accident or something that they're not going to have the right insurance, and they don't have the right insurance, and I got to fix my car. And I got to fix my car, then I'm never going to be able to drive again. And like,
Yeah.
whoa.
Back way off of that, babe. Just get back, get another car, bro. That's just all.
When we overthink, even my sister-in-law forgot to bring the corn out in our dinner, and she's like, "Well, nobody got to eat corn last night, and I have all this corn, and what am I going to do?" I'm like, okay, it's a
I'll
bowl of
have it for
corn.
lunch.
I'll take it home, no problem.
Gonna make a corn salad. We got this, man. It's all right. Okay. Dr. B, you just been awesome, man. This is great. It didn't go where I thought it was, but it went better.
Oh, good.
I loved this conversation. I don't mean better like, but you know what I mean. I
It
love
went well. I'm glad we had it. We needed to have that conversation. So
love
that's
it.
why
I
we
love
had
it.
it.
And and there's just so much we can gain if we just talk to each other and talk honest and not talk over each other or
Yeah.
pigeonhole each other. Let's just get it's over, man. Let it go, everybody. Let's get along.
Yeah.
I don't know. It just blows my mind. It blows my mind that we're still here. It's just I don't know. It just blows my mind. I don't know.
It's
So
100% about relationship. And if you're willing to learn, and that goes back to serving, if you're willing to serve others, right? Well, part of serving others is learning about them, not what's in it for me, not this is how we do it. Let me find out a little bit about how you do it, and let me try to understand you from where you're at, like the conversation that we had. You asked amazing questions that allowed me to be able to say, hey, this is what we feel like in our culture or whatever. And so we get to have a relationship now. You and I get to talk to each other, and we have so many things in common. The part of the country that you live in, and I live there, right? So it's not like I haven't been to
I
the
know the
J
high school
W.
you're talking about. We're just
You.
down the street.
My favorite restaurant's at JW Marriott, the Mikado, where you take the boat out to the restaurant. I know we know so there's so many things that we can continue to have conversations about, but we have to be in relationship first. And that trust piece is that I trust you more now because you asked the questions, right? Because you actually cared about me and wanted to know what I was thinking. And if we do that reciprocal, all the world will change. I mean, it really will. But so many times we don't want to do that. We want to stay in our own.
Dr. B is changing the world one tiger bite at a time.
I love it. I love
All
it.
right, everybody, listen. This has just been awesome. You have just experienced the amazingness of Dr. Brian E. Arnold, Dr. B. Dr. B, he's got the host of two inspiring podcasts. We got the Journey of Freedom podcast, the Living Boldly with Purpose podcast. You got to get up every morning and go to YouTube. You got to subscribe to the 7 Minute Mindset YouTube series. You got to go there. You got to like it. You got to subscribe it. And you got to watch it every morning so he gets a ton of views and blow that thing up because he's going to help a bunch of people. Look for There Is No Tiger, Overcoming Overthinking, Controlling Anxiety. It's an awesome book, beautiful artwork. And Dr. B's newest book, Decision Formula. And I that one, I walked through some of what's going on with that, and I love that. And like you said, you lose your leg, that's a decision that's not going to change. But so many other things you can. Don't panic. It's okay. We're going to be good. And we're good because we got to spend an hour with Dr. B.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. You keep supporting Gary here because it's going to be amazing. A lot of shows. I saw a couple of the shows. The What If. I know what if now, so I love it. Keep doing what you're doing.
Well, when are you guys going to Alabama?
January 30th through February 3rd. So we'll be there for 5 days.
Awesome. Well, maybe we'll check in a couple months from
I
now.
would love
Let's
to do
touch
that.
base. I'd love to hear the update on how that went.
Yeah.
And if we're going to continue to do that, because that's a powerful thing. And I think that's going to change a lot of lives. So let's check back in on that.
You got it. We'll do it. Thanks.
All right, buddy. Thank you so much, Dr. B. Everybody, that was another episode of the What If You Could podcast with Dr. B. And we will see you next time. Thanks, guys. See ya. Thanks again for joining us on another episode of What If You Could podcast. Please subscribe, like, share, and give us any feedback. We'd love to hear it. And remember, if you can dream it, you can do it. See you next time.